So good morning. What a production. Things used to be simpler, I can tell you that. But this is how it is. So my name is Bokushu. I want to welcome you and thank you for coming out on this balmy 30-degree morning. For those of you, us in the Zendo. And I want to welcome you online. So my talk today will revolve around our study text, and maybe you know this, but every intensive practice period, we have 2 per year. We're right now in the winter Ango. We have a study text. In fact, we actually have 2 now. The main one is Eihei Dogen's Tenzo Kyokun, or Instructions for the Zen Cook. And also Bernie Glassman's Instructions, I think it's to the Cook, both of them a companion text. I'll primarily be working with Dogen's text this morning. I recommend strongly that if you have not read these books, that you get your hands on them. I actually brought them to the Zendo and meant to flash them for you so you could actually see the products, but I left them in my bag in the other room, so just look on our website and the titles will reveal themselves to you. So I want to begin by distilling very much to the essence what I think the Tenzo Kyokun is telling us. And I think the word that comes up for me when I read this text is attitude. I think there is nothing more important in this book than how it focuses on 2 aspects of the attitude that we can bring to our practice. Through the example of the Tenzo, the Zen cook, and we are all Zen cooks. We're cooking right now. So what is the attitude with which we do this cooking? The first is to be meticulously attentive to every detail in front of us. To not take anything for granted, but to really focus our attention on exactly what we're doing and nothing else. And this is so countercultural, right? Because we are in a multitasking world where if I'm not doing 3 to 5 things at the same time, I'm not productive. I'm not corporate. And so on. So, it's interesting that even back 800 years ago and more, people still had this issue of focusing on one thing and giving their entire undivided attention to that thing. And then the second quality or attitude that I think is of importance in Dogen's explanation is non-discrimination. So he makes quite a point of saying that regardless of the quality of the ingredients, we are to treat them with equal respect and care. And he uses the example of plain grasses as opposed to delicacies that we might get as a cook. But I think we can see in our so-called ordinary daily lives the different experiences that we have, the different encounters that we have and are part of, how those are in fact ingredients of different qualities. And yet of the same quality, different qualities in our experience, but of the same fundamental quality, and that quality is reality, which is us. Our experiences and what we encounter are us. So can we apply a non-discriminatory, tolerant, and disciplined attention to what we're encountering right now? That basically, to me, is the essence of the book and its teaching. And late in the essay, Dogen talks about 3 minds. And I think that these 3 minds are sort of the vehicle that allow us to realize his vision of meticulous attention that is non-discriminatory. And Fukan Sensei on Thursday gave an excellent talk about the three minds. I do recommend it to your attention. And at the risk of repeating Fugan's talk, I'm going to give you a little bit of information about them, and then I'll apply them to certain experiences that I've had. So there are three minds that I think Dogen points to as vehicles for creating non-discriminating attention. The first is Kishin, or joyful mind. And in the text it says, therefore, rejoice in your birth into the world, where you are capable of using your body freely to offer food to the three treasures, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, considering the innumerable possibilities in a timeless universe, we have been given a marvelous opportunity. The merit of working as a Tenzo will never decay. My sincerest desire is that you exhaust all the strength and effort of your lives, past, present, and future, and every moment of every day into your practice through the work of the Tenzo, so that you form a strong connection with the Buddha Dharma. To view all things with this attitude is called joyful mind. What a clarion call to fully investing ourselves in our own experience and to focusing our attention on exactly what is in front of us. However, the word joyful is something that some of us might have challenges around. I know that I have challenges around the word joyful. It's got some baggage for me, or rather, I've got some baggage for it. So I'm going to bring that up in a bit. Now that's the first mind, and then there's the second mind, Roshin, or parental mind. Roshin is the mind or attitude of a parent. In the same way that a parent cares for an only child, keep the three treasures in your mind. A parent, irrespective of poverty or difficult circumstances, loves and raises a child with care. How deep is love like this? Only a parent can understand it. Only a person in whom this mind has arisen can understand it, and only one in whom this attitude has become second nature can fully realize it. Here too I have some challenges. Maybe you, when you reflect on your parents, don't necessarily see the joyful, loving, attentive, totally self-sacrificing beings that seem to be implied by the language of this part of the book. I'm just guessing, or perhaps I'm the only one. We'll get to this one too. And then the third mind, magnanimous mind, or Daishin. Magnanimous mind is like a mountain, stable and impartial. Exemplifying the ocean, it is tolerant and views everything from the broadest perspective. Having a magnanimous mind means being without prejudice and refusing to take sides. When carrying something that weighs an ounce, do not think of it as light, and likewise when you carry 50 pounds, do not think of it as heavy. Do not get carried away by the sounds of spring, nor heavy-hearted upon seeing the colors of fall. View the changes of the seasons as a whole, and the relativeness of light and heavy from a broad perspective. It is then that you should write, understand, and study the character for magnanimous. So, joyful, parental, and magnanimous. These sound pretty cool, don't they? Pretty nice. But what if you're not feeling joyful? What if you're not a parent or you didn't really enjoy the way your parents were or are parental? And what if you're not feeling particularly magnanimous, as you understand magnanimity to be, or as he explains it here? What if you don't think you're measuring up to these attitudes that create the attitude of non-discriminating total attention? This is where I get really interested, is when the book tells you A and you've got B or Z. We have to be, above all with this practice, completely honest with ourselves. Scrupulous attention to exactly the way things are for each of us. We can't put on an attitude. We can't fake it until we make it. If you fake it, you will never make it. So don't even begin trying to do that. And where do we often begin trying to do that? By trying to be good. Are you here because you'd like to be good? A good person? What would that look like for you? And how would you evaluate it? How would you judge your success at being good? What is your attitude toward your real attitude? The point of Zen, in my opinion, is to reduce suffering. And if you try to be good, you will do nothing but increase suffering, because you will always be worried about how good you are. Relative to yesterday, are you a little better? Are you more good today than last year? And who is noticing how good you are? Is your goodness being properly registered and appreciated by the audience that you've selected to evaluate you? What a torture chamber! But don't we often fall into this trap? Telling ourselves how we ought to be and trying to measure up to that. And where did we get those criteria from? This is not at all aligned with Zen practice. And I implore you and myself to abandon it fully here and now. I'm just as subject to it as you, because it is our conditioning to behave in this way, to think of ourselves as inadequate, and to be needing improvement, and to be needing to demonstrate that improvement to all and sundry, left, right, and center. Do you see how good I am now? Now that I'm a Zen practitioner, I'm so much better, so much more generous, so much more tolerant, so much more joyous, parental, and magnanimous. 999. Das ist nicht gut. So, Dogen quotes a text in his essay called the Chanyuan King Wi, and it says, the Sangha is the most precious of all things. Those who live in this community are unfettered by the pettiness of social affairs. Such a community manifests a refined posture devoid of fabrication about the world. Interesting. Devoid of fabrication about the world. A refined posture, devoid of fabrication. I urge you to contemplate what that would look like for you. I think it's an extremely compelling phrase. Refined posture. What is the feeling that you get when you allow yourself to feel and be exactly what you are? And how often during a given day do you allow yourself to do that? In your Zen kitchen, with your ingredients. But you might ask at this point, well, okay, Bokushu, that sounds fine. Okay, I'm good as I am. But if we don't need to improve, what then? What's the point? Why am I here? Or as Subhuti asked the Buddha in the Diamond Sutra, how, Lord, should one who has set out on the Bodhisattva path take his stand? How should he proceed? How should he control the mind? So I'd like to use this mind to offer a couple of examples of how it might look. Recently, I was in the doctor's office. I've been having various health complaints. And I came out of the little exam room and went back up to the check-in area because I had to get something done. And it was late in the afternoon, and I hadn't had lunch. And if you could notice by looking at me, I'm a little scrawny. I can't miss regular feedings. And I was hungry. So I was really ready to get out of that office. And I opened the door to the little waiting area where I would get what I needed. And there were 2 people waiting and 1 person to help them. And I sized them up like that. One of the people waiting looked like she had it all together. And it would be a 5-second Q&A, and off she'd go. And the other one, well, let's just say he didn't look promising from a Bokushu getting his lunch standpoint. He was very lopsided, and he just had an aspect that told me this is going to take a long time. And indeed, things went as I had expected. And when he finally got around to his question, it was very involved. And after his question, there was another question. So this was going on, and I'm supposed to be a Zen practitioner, and so on and so forth. And inside, I'm writhing, absolutely losing my mind inside about this delay, because I just want to get the hell out. So as I was losing my mind, I was watching myself losing my mind and asking myself, well, okay, you're losing your mind. Do you need to lose your mind over this? Is there an alternative to not going crazy over this right now? And the response came back, no. There is no alternative to going crazy right now. So the response became, okay, this is what I have to do right now. But I'm going to do it in the least harmful way. This guy is going to do what he needs to do, and he's going to get the help he needs, and I'm just going to go crazy quietly over here until it's over. And that's what I did. So I was just like, it's taking so long, what the hell's wrong with him, blah, blah. All that was going on. It was like, yeah, that's going on, and it doesn't matter. Nobody gives a damn. It's going to go on until it stops. Period. So then a person came, and so then there were 2 people to help us. So I went over to her and got what I needed. And as fate would have it, the gentleman who I'd been waiting for and I left at the same time. And then we went down in the elevator, and then we went out the door, and I just stood there and watched him. Watched him walk wherever he went. And what I can tell you is that at that moment, there was a total identification between this person who I had let myself torment myself about and me. Yes, I need attention. Yes, I have my own things to take care of. Just like him. Absolutely no difference. Non-discrimination happened after a lot of discrimination, after a lot of writhing and separation. I was totally identified with this guy. So don't think that you can predict how these attitudes manifest in you. Just be there for every last second of them. Squeeze every last drop out of your direct experience of how you are in every situation with every person you encounter. If you can do that, you immediately accede to joyful, parental, and magnanimous mind. You are cooking with the best of them. And that doesn't mean it's special. That means it is absolutely plain, unmixed, totally unadulterated reality. Nothing special. Nothing added on. So the second example was Sing Sing Prison, where I go usually once a month. And it's always an adventure. We never know what we'll get when we go there. Getting in and seeing the people we're there to see is a big job. And on this particular day, something went wrong. Never mind what it was, but it meant a delay. So rather than go in as I expected, I was sent to a trailer where visitors who are going to see their loved ones are sent. We go through a different entrance, we volunteers. And I was just left there to cool my heels until whatever it was got resolved. And there was only one other person in that trailer, and it was a woman waiting to see a person, I assume, who she was related to or in love with behind the walls. And we were both stuck. When the thing that went wrong goes wrong, everything stops in the prison and no one goes in or out or anywhere until it's regulated. So we just sat there. And I can tell you that this trailer was absolutely squalid, filthy, totally unmaintained, depressing. Just every aspect of it showing a lack of care, a lack of maintenance, a lack of attention. The exact opposite of what Dogen is telling us to do, really. And yet that was the very place where the reality that Dogen inspires in all of us to connect with occurs. If you give yourself that attention, if you really are with your surroundings, if you are observing meticulously everything that's going on in and out of you, it happens. Just be with your experience completely, including your response to your experience. It is all reality. It is all you. It is cooking of the highest order. And it just went on from there. I was transferred from there to another ghastly waiting area filled with vending machines. It was interesting to see the brightly packaged garbage that was in those machines and watching people partake of that garbage from time to time. You know how that stuff is in those machines and those little curlicue things kind of turn? When you put the money in, they turn. Ever seen that? Turning. And then it drops. The thing you bought turns and drops. And there's something about that that has a very deep connection with this practice. That turning and dropping of what you wanted. And finally, after 2 hours, I got to see the people I was there to see. But what was interesting about these two examples for me was that in the first, as I said, I was writhing with impatience. And in the second, I was committed to simply experience whatever befell me. Whatever it was, however long it took, whatever the outcome, whether I was getting in or not getting in, I was determined to simply go through it and experience it exactly the way it was. And I can't tell you whether the first contributed to the attitude of the second, or whether the second contributed to the attitude of the first. We think of one as following the other, but can we really be sure that what happened 2 days later did not have some subtle influence on what happened 2 days before? I don't know. I despise mysticism, but I allow for the possibility that anything could happen. So what do you think? Was my mind joyous, parental, and magnanimous on these occasions? We have to consider that these words are meaningless, and that in our attempt to enact them, we think we know what they mean, but that our approximations of these qualities are pitifully limited. So in his text, Dogen also writes, both day and night allow all things to come into and reside within your mind. Allow your mind and all things to function together as a whole. And I think that this language really describes what happened at the doctor and in the prison for me. Both day and night, allow all things to come in and reside within your mind. Allow your mind and all things to function together as a whole, which they are. It's not changing the relationship between our minds and reality. It's realizing the inherent unity of our minds and reality. Through practice with exactly what happens to you. But I have to ask, what is your mind? What is my mind? Is there a gap between your mind and mine? Mind? What's the difference at this moment? Is your mind what permits you to hear? And is my mind what permits me to speak? This question of mind is absolutely vital in Zen teaching, and it's no accident that it is the subject of at least 8 of the 49 koans in the very first collection of koans that we work with, the Mumen koan. And if we go back to the Diamond Sutra, which I quoted earlier, there's a very famous section that says, past mind is ungraspable, present mind is ungraspable, future mind is ungraspable. Why is your mind ungraspable? If you think your mind is ungraspable because you already have a mind, that's incorrect. The ungraspability of your mind has nothing to do with having or not having. This is something worth reflecting on. What is your mind? Where does it reside? And why is it ungraspable? In the examples that I offered to you, I allowed all things to come into and reside within my mind. And it wasn't because I read Dogen and he told me to let all things come into and reside within my mind, so I'm going to do that. If we practice assiduously, it will just happen as a matter of course. that we can connect with reality. Realize the connection is actually what I should say. By being completely present to our experience and putting our attention on our grasping and aversion, we can prepare the supreme meal, as the other study text, Bernie Glassman's book, says. When we live our life fully, our life becomes what Zen Buddhists call the supreme meal. We make this supreme meal by using the ingredients at hand to make the best meal possible, and then by offering it. A filthy floor, bright colors in a vending machine, gloved hands going over my belongings, walking through a metal detector, waiting for a man who desperately needs to be heard to go through every last little bit of his shit. This is the supreme meal. There's a koan or story in the literature as two Zen teachers walking, and one of them says to the other, "This is the summit of the mystic peak." And the other teacher says, "Yes, what a pity." I just have a little more to offer you, just because this might be helpful. Guifeng Zhuangmi, who was alive from 780 to 841, on the teachings of his Hangzhou school, said this: "The Hangzhou school asserts that our arising the mind and moving thoughts, snapping the fingers, moving the eyes, etc., is wholly the activity of Buddha nature itself, and not the movement of anything else. In a word, the entirety of our wanting something, getting angry at something, or arousing the passions, whether good or evil, pleasurable or painful, is all Buddha nature. For example, just as from wheat flour are made noodles, crackers, and various other foods, so is every single one of these products the same wheat flour. In short, there is no need to arouse the mind to stop evil thoughts, nor any need to arouse the mind to cultivate the way. Since the way as it is mind, we cannot cultivate mind with mind. Since evil is also mind, we cannot cut off mind with mind. Not trying to cut off evil or trying to cultivate good, just letting things follow their own courses and being ourselves is what they call liberation of mind. Nowhere is there any Dharma principle that we ought to embrace, nor any Buddha that we ought to strive to obtain. Just like the empty sky that does not need increase or decrease, so with our mind, what need could there be to augment or amend it? And why? Because outside of our mind itself, there is absolutely not the least little thing of value to be obtained. We can't put on an act. This is not some sort of a Broadway show where we get good reviews for our good works, or we get panned because we fall short, or mixed reviews. We have to be completely honest with ourselves, and I think if we are, and if we're guided by the precepts, then we can just see what happens. Trust your practice as a practice, and don't add anything further to it. Don't add any demands to it. Don't ask it to justify itself to you. Don't try to measure what comes out of it. Practice your practice as a practice. which is nothing other than the fullest possible expression of you and your mind. I'm going to close with a poem to encourage you. This is a poem from Soen Nakagawa. I went to the mountain seeking enlightenment. There was no enlightenment on the mountainside. In desolation I cried out, and there came an echo. I shouted again. The echo came again. Thank you.